Mr. Ambassador, a lot of people have written off foreign policy as an issue in this campaign. I take it you disagree.
Well, I think foreign policy is always an issue. I think the American people are very pragmatic, and they don't get into the intricacies of a lot of foreign policy issues, but what they do expect is to see in a presidential candidate the indications of leadership, of judgment, of vision that will, in the presidency itself, lead to the president being able to protect American interests. I think Governor Romney projects that. I think people look for that in a presidential candidate. And so even indirectly, I think the question of America's role in the world is always very much on people's minds.
We'll return to Governor Romney in just a moment, but let me start with President Obama. General consensus, you know, he killed bin Laden and ended the wars.
He did not kill bin Laden, so I don't buy the general consensus. I think it's fair to say that Osama bin Laden was killed while Obama was president, but not because he was president. The effort to get Osama bin Laden had been underway for 10 years through our intelligence services and our military. I give the president due credit for making the tactical decision. It was a good call to go after him in Pakistan, but the credit belongs to the people who have been working on this problem for 10 years. And you know, when you make a call that turns out to be successful, that 99.9% of the American people agree with, I think that's something that redounds to the benefit of the country, not the president.
Forgive me if I'm incorrect about this, but in a 2008 debate, didn't Mitt Romney say he would not put troops into another sovereign country, an ally like Pakistan, in order to go after bin Laden?
Well, I don't think that was the right context, and I think that it's a circumstance where we have always said if we find bin Laden, we're going to bring him to justice, and where that is a matter of pure convenience at that point.
Okay, let's talk about Mitt Romney. What is it that you see in him as a candidate that gives you comfort on the foreign policy front?
Well, I think he's had enormous international experience over a long career. Bain Capital had businesses and investors that were global in scope. Being a governor of a major state like Massachusetts necessarily involves you in international economic matters. And as head of the Salt Lake Olympic Committee in 2002, I can tell you, having dealt with the Olympics when I was at the State Department, that has problems that make the UN General Assembly sometimes look like a sandbox. So he has engaged in these issues before. He's thought about it a good deal. He's written about it. I think he'll hit the ground running on January the 20th.
What do you see as the major foreign policy concerns that whoever is president over the next 4 years is going to have to face?
Well, I think the most immediate problem is the question of Iran's search for nuclear weapons. I think that grows more urgent day by day. The proliferation problem generally, North Korea, other would-be nuclear weapons state, the continuing global war on terrorism. Even the Obama administration doesn't talk about it. It's out there and growing. Iraq, Afghanistan, the Middle East, you've got Hugo Chavez in this hemisphere, Russia, China. It's a long, long list. Just because we haven't seen much about national security in the debate internally in the U.S. over the past 3.5 years doesn't mean these problems have gone away. In fact, I would argue that by not addressing them, by not considering the implications of these problems, we've actually made them worse.
There are a lot of Americans who are weary and tired of war. Afghanistan and Iraq have been going on for a long time, and they wonder if perhaps there's a push from the conservative front for another war with Iran. Can you allay any of those concerns?
Look, nobody's looking for more conflict. The issue is whether we're protecting vital American interests around the world, and the Obama policy, I think, has left us in a much weaker posture, certainly in the Middle East, but globally as well, and that has implications for our life here at home. If we don't have a strong American posture internationally, we're not going to have a sustained economic recovery. And it works the other way, too. If we don't have a strong domestic economy, we can't maintain a strong position internationally.
So how has President Obama weakened our position internationally?
Well, let's take just one example, $1.5 trillion in budget cuts if the sequestration goes through in the Defense Department. Every other department of government has seen its budget expenditures go out of control. The Defense Department alone has faced massive cuts. which with the sequestration, even Defense Secretary Leon Panetta says would be devastating for the United States. We have a president who's comfortable with American decline. We've seen him pull out of Iraq. We've seen him announce a withdrawal from Afghanistan, all unrelated to American strategic interest and conditions on the ground, ineffective in dealing with Russia, absent without leave in dealing with China. The list goes on and on.
The United States spends, and excuse me if I get the numbers wrong, but I believe it's more than the next 18 or 17 countries in the world combined on defense. Do we need to be the global policeman anymore? And what do you say to people who say we need more cooperation from international partners?
I don't think it's a question of being the global policeman. We advance our interest. We protect stability that's beneficial to us. A lot of other people benefit from it too, but we're not doing it out of altruism. We're doing it because we need to. And if you look at these expenditures, that's a very fallacious comparison. Number one, most other countries don't report accurately. Russia and China defense expenditures are a percentage, a small percentage of what they spend in total on national security issues. And we are the only global power. We have interest in East Asia. We have interest in Latin America. We have interest in Europe. We have interest in the Middle East. We have interest in Africa. Nobody else does. So it's not a question of a one-on-one comparison. We are everywhere because our economy and our people are everywhere. And that's what we have to keep in mind. So by comparison to defense expenditures in the United States, let's say in the 1950s, forget the Vietnam War, forget the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, as a percentage of gross national product, they're half what they were in the 1950s. We're not paying too much. I worry we're not paying enough.
You left out Antarctica. I'm not sure if we have an interest in Antarctica. And I'm just kidding. One last question. I know you've been a consultant or an advisor to the Romney campaign on foreign policy. Do you envision a role within the Romney administration if he's elected? Has that been discussed at all?
No, it has not been discussed at all, and it wouldn't be appropriate to be. I think you need, as my former boss Jim Baker used to say, keep your eyes on the prize. And the prize is the election on November 6th. And then, once the governor is elected, he can then worry about who's in his administration.